Here's what I have learned is that we didn't do direct sales and we don't do direct sales like anybody else, and that's a good thing. I think sometimes when you have founders that come from outside of an industry into an industry, they can add value to that industry because they have a different perspective. And I will offer that the direct sales industry has been incredibly welcoming to Scout and Cellar and to me as a leader. So I'm very grateful to that industry in general. But they've welcomed the way that we've disrupted it, and they've highlighted us and told our story in a lot of ways. So that's been super, super cool.
Well, hello and welcome to Athena Talks. A very exciting day today because we're sitting down with the Sarah Shadonix, who is just a remarkable human being. Started off her journey as a former Division I track star, turned mother, wife, litigator, who then decided, hey, I'm just going to go found and start my own business. And now she is sitting in the seat as CEO of Scout and Cellar, just building her empire. But my most fun fact about Sarah, which a lot of people don't know, is that 20-some years ago, she was actually my rack mate at Marine Corps Officer Candidate School. So that's where I want to start, because I'm sure, Sarah, that a lot of people don't know that fun fact about you.
That is true.
All right, so we're going to go back 20-some years ago to OCS. What stands out to you about OCS, and was there anything about the Marine Corps journey that kind of set your pathway to where you are today?
So much of it truly set my path. And I had a full circle moment that I'll talk about in a minute, Katie. But truly that experience with you at OCS was transformational for my life in so many ways. Taught me how to be more resilient. And that even in the face of wanting to give up after, midnight humps and crawling through mud and wanting to quit, was, all you need is find a peer group that encourages you to be your best and to never give up no matter what. It taught me that to never give up no matter what, and how good that can feel and how rewarding that can be. It taught me what true leadership can look like. And that's just, being among a group of people and having a positive spirit is sometimes enough. And it taught me the power of community and, through esprit de corps, and how powerful that is, both, in the military and also in the civilian world. And I've applied that throughout my professional journey as well. And so many other things that, how little words of encouragement when your friends are in trouble, but also it taught me that even if your friends turn their back on you by selling you out and packing up your stuff, maybe you can forgive them.
Oh, well, first let's just go back a second, because from the moment I met you, the one trait that you instilled in me that I've tried to live by for the last 20-some years is authenticity. I mean, you are the most authentic, genuine person. And I still remember the day that I met you. We didn't start out in the same racks, but the attrition at Officer Candidate School, it was 74% attrition. Something crazy. So quickly we were rack mates, and I will never forget, stressed out environment. You don't know what to do. You don't want to make eye contact with anybody. All of a sudden I'm standing next to the rack, and you reach out your hand and you're like, I'm Sarah. And I about have a heart attack. So we're not supposed to be on a first name basis. This is third person. We're only candidates. You just said your first name. And I just stopped clear in my tracks, and I looked at you and I'm like, oh my God. But it totally de-escalated the whole situation. And from that moment, I had to think of what my first name was, right? As a former athlete, that's you, right? You've always gone by your last name. And then now you're an OCS going by candidate. But it just totally de-escalated the situation and brought humor into it. And from that point on, just the authenticity that you brought to that environment carried with me all the way through. And I know I was devastated the day that you came back with a yellow circle. did you end up with a yellow circle on your skivvy shirt? And for the Marines in the crowd, you're totally going to understand what that means. But tell us.
So in the first, the introductory PFT, just to make sure that you have a pulse and can run, like to even like get to even go to the squad bay, like you have to do this introductory PFT. And I passed out at the end of the run. I completed it all, but I passed out at the end of the run. This is the same day they took a bunch of blood from us, and I think I just was dehydrated. I was a Division I track athlete, so I and ended up, just receiving a little medical treatment, but certainly a scar for life to my pride and ego, because there I am going around, PT everyone with this yellow scar of shame. But ended up doing okay despite that. But the thing that happened was that I alluded to earlier is I went to the infirmary, got checked out, cleared out, whatever. And then I had to go back and report back to my platoon. And apparently during that short amount of time, my 2B rack mate packed up all my stuff into my trunk, my foot locker, and was ready to get me out of there. She was like, one less competitor, good for me. So she packed up you, Katie, packed up all my stuff. It was sitting neatly in the squad base, so I had to go and report to the sergeant instructor and tell her that I was back and fine. And she said, "No, this you have been kicked out of OCS. You're not a qualified candidate. You're out." So I had to stand there and convince her in the third person that I was worthy of continuing to have another shot, and it felt like what was forever. But they let me stay in.
Fair, that was not my choice to pack you up. The candidate was told to pack you up, and I thought you'd died, because all I know is that you were there at the start of the run, and then gone, and then came back with the yellow circle, and I was like, oh man, I don't know how we're going to get out of this one.
Yeah, we did.
But part of, the Marine Corps training is introducing failure into your life, especially with people that have never really experienced failure. So I think what's important is, having to stand tall in front of very authoritative sergeant instructors and a platoon commander and plead your case to stay. And how did you, muster up the courage? How did you just not accept the failure? And, what you learned from that, how did you transcend that into building, Scout and Cellar from scratch?
I think that's a good question, because I think that particular experience was truly life-changing. I remember the feeling I had standing in front of the sergeant instructor's door and banging on those concrete cinder blocks, asking to speak and pleading my case to stay. And what drove me to plead my case was what was on the other side of the yes, you can stay, and what was on the other side of the no, you can't. And the curiosity that I had truly it was just curiosity. I wanted to finish the journey I had started. And I wasn't even thinking about it as failure, but I was just wanting to continue the journey that I was on. It was as simple as that. And this was just one of the roadblocks. But it's certainly that experience and a few others like that at OCS taught me practical ways to carry out resilience,
Yeah, and you did get your payback, because as you would sit really hard studying, because, ladies and gentlemen, Sarah ended up, one of the most proud moments of my life was sitting there at graduation and watching Sarah be the honor grad from OCS. But the payback came in the fact that to get to honor grad, you studied really hard. And I remember so many nights just sitting with you on the bathroom floor as you studied and I wrote essays, because I continually got in trouble for having no bearing, and you got to study and I got to write my essays. So we got payback, but it was certainly a happy moment when we actually got to unpack you and bring you back into the fight.
It was good. But you wrote those essays, Katie, because that's part of one of my favorite things about you, which is that you are the consummate team player, and you make everybody else around you, no matter how you have to accomplish that, and that includes getting in trouble. So you did it.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about your track career, and there's so many interesting studies and narratives out there about how females in competitive athletics end up, what is it like? I think there's an Ernst & Young study out there that says like 94% of female executives out there had a competitive athletic background. So Marine Corps side, that's amazing. Like obviously you had the skill set to be the honor grad, but let's talk about your track upbringing, becoming a spider, and what track and competitive athletics did for you, and how you pulled some of that discipline into, having the courage to leave a comfortable litigation job and start a company from nothing.
Yeah, I mean, what is courage? It's being scared of doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I mean. There's so many callings that require you to do that on a daily basis, and track is one of them. Every time you run a race, you have to have courage. It's going to hurt, literally be quite painful to, unless you're a sprinter running 100 or 200 meter, probably won't hurt that much. But if you're running the 400 meter or above, like, it's going to hurt and you're going to do it anyway. And so I think one of the just fundamental things that I learned running track was having courage to do something that I, was going to be hard, and doing it all the time, every day. Also the power and the craziness and the crazy unlock of consistency. Show up, be there, do something, and do it all the time, and you're going to get good results. And also, I love being on teams. And track is such a fun team to be a part of, because most people think of track as an individual sport. But to win championships in track, which we did my senior year, you have to kind of rally a group of individuals doing different things: throwers, jumpers, hurdlers, distance runners, that are all totally different types of athletes, and get them to rally around a common cause, which is different than a basketball team or a football team. And so doing that was a really big unlock, and certainly taught me a lot as a leader to move forward, that I certainly applied at Scout Cellar. So, plus it's just a grind. I mean, God, I ran the 400 meter, like, whew, you just put yourself through punishment, and it like makes everything else, in life seem like relative.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that says everything about you. The fact that, you wanted to go to OCS, and then you're 400 sprinter. And you mentioned like, oh, not a sprinter, 100 and 200 meters. But I remember watching you run for the first time, and when we actually didn't do an endurance run and got to sprint for the first time, and I was like, oh my God, I've never seen somebody run so fast. Like nobody, like men and women alike at OCS could not keep up with you, and I'm like, oh my God. So, okay, you could say 400 maybe isn't sprinting, but I've seen you run, and that is sprinting, my friend. That is sprinting.
Oh, I love it. Well, I did those races too, but they didn't take as much courage.
Well, an element of that and the discipline and everything you get from sports and team and athletics, it does kind of start to embed in you just this fitness, wellness lifestyle. How do you keep going with that today, and how important is that to you to maintain both your physical and mental health as you take on all the millions of things that you take on a daily basis?
Yeah, I mean, I think physical health is critical and important for so many reasons, but like the number one most important reason that I prioritize it, because it makes me feel good. I mean, that's so simple, but like I literally feel good when I'm doing it, after I'm doing it, and it makes me feel good because I look better, and that makes me feel better about myself. But it's also fun, but it's really critical for my mental health as well. The older I get, the more stressed the more I learn about myself. It's amazing how much more I learn about myself now than I even knew a couple years ago. Wow. I realize how critical movement is for my mind.
So a question I get a lot, especially from the junior associates, how do you make the time? Like, how do you do it, right? Like, we're so busy. We've got to serve our clients. We do the day-to-day grind. So as somebody who is incredibly busy, as a mother of two, a wife, running a company, like, how do you make that time, and what tips and tricks do you have for just making it a priority?
Yeah, I mean, you make it a priority.
Yeah.
But tips and tricks are, easy. I think there's this myth that you have to go and spend an hour for it to be successful. No, 10 minutes here and there is totally great. If that's all you can do, that's better than nothing. And I think whatever works for you works. So whether it's 10 minutes of weights, a 10-minute walk outside in a particularly busy week, but like don't be too hard on yourself, just get it done. Um, I think a lot of people, I'm guilty of this too sometimes. Or like, oh, I'm not going to work out today because I don't have 30 minutes, or I don't have an hour. Just get something done and move your body, because it's like the flywheel. Once you start, you'll keep going, but if you get off of it, you'll be off. At least that's what I find myself guilty of. But yeah, find what works and find what's fun for you.
Yeah. Have you been able to develop kind of that fitness mentality in the Scout and Cellar culture? And if so, like how? Like how do you see that resonating among your team?
Yes, for sure. I think the way that our brand is positioned, like it attracts a type of demographic that does care about health and wellness and does care about their fitness and is active. So the types of folks that are interested in and engaged with our brands, like our sales force, they tend to be folks that are active. So that already permeates our culture when we're traveling on sales trips and stuff like that. People are out late at night enjoying themselves, and they're up at the gym or out on the beach or out in the wherever we are, running or working out or lifting or cycling or whatever. Um, and so, live hard, play hard, work hard, run hard is kind of like this kind of culture that we've surrounded ourselves with that kind of exemplifies our brand. And then rest hard, of course.
Yeah, a funny part though is now you do some distance running, whereas 20 years ago you would finish a 3 mile run and you'd be like, oh my god, I'm never doing this again. So how have you transitioned from that 400-meter sprinter to someone that actually enjoys the distance run? What has that been?
I just got old, so I had to like listen to my body, you know? But it's been good. I've done a few marathons and half marathons. I just try to get out. Like I like to be outside. And I've taken up rucking, which I love. Just whatever it is that gets you moving, that gets me moving, that gets me fired up to get me some vitamin D or get me sweating. Like I'll do whatever it is. I'm too old to sprint. My body's like, no, we're not going to be doing that today. I mean, I can do a little bit, but like, I'll pay for it.
Yeah. Well, they say like one of the most important decisions that you can make in your life is your partner, right? So I want to talk a little bit about Matthew because he's been with you. You guys have been on this journey for a long time. And the funny part is, Matthew's a lawyer too, and two litigators in a relationship, and I would say you're definitely the risk taker in the relationship, and Matthew keeps you level. But how have you been able to maintain this remarkable partnership through all kind of the twists and turns, and how does Matthew play into the good idea fairy when it comes to Sarah's mind and she just wants to run and execute?
We joke that Matthew's the bollard in our relationship that keeps our family unit grounded, and is critical to our success, our happiness, and defining us. We met in law school in 2003, and then got married in 2006. So yes, it's been quite a journey. But we are, two peas in the same pod, but on the different sides of the things. We're very similar, but very different, and that's what makes it work. I'm the risk taker. He's the conservative manager and bollard. But he's my greatest adversary and greatest fan, greatest. He makes me the best version of myself, and I hope that I do that for him. But yeah, I mean, he helps define and shape who I am every day. Like he's awesome, and I love to get to do life with him. He's awesome. So
yeah, Matthew is awesome. You guys are a great team. But take us back. So you both are having a great time practicing law. You're an incredibly successful litigator. He's years into the practice of law. Everything is going great. And then that good idea fairy comes and is like, Matthew, I'm going to walk away from the practice of law because I have an idea and I want to start this company. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to start it. Like, take us back to that moment.
yeah, I'm already starting down the wine journey when this is happening. And he's supporting me in that. nursing our daughter, who's like a couple months old at the time, putting her down at night, driving across town at 11 p.m. to go blind taste with a bunch of 25-year-old, 30-year-old, like hipster somms. Okay. And then before that, I would be blind tasting with Matthew. He'd be helping me or being mentored by some other folks around town just to learn the wine game more than just being a good consumer. But I mean, honestly, Katie, he was so supportive. I don't think either of us knew quite the magnitude of what was going to happen. Um, but he believed in me. He believes in me. And that's part of what allows me to be great is his belief. He breathes greatness into me with the belief. And, yeah, so he just was like, yeah, go for it. Whatever, I'm here to support you. And so he continued on running his law firm while I went and did my little wine thing, as the family calls it. Do your little wine thing, Sarah. It's going to be great.
So he didn't pack up your stuff and
No, he is not that good of a friend. No, he didn't pack up my stuff. Just cheer me on out the door after I got a yellow circle. Yeah. But then after a year and a half, the company was doing well, and we were in a position where he was able to come and join the company full time, and he made it 1,000 times better than it was before. So it was cool.
yeah. So how do you make that life decision though? When there's like just so much security in taking the standard path, right? Like you were what 9 years as a practicing litigator, doing great. Like how do you even begin to decide that you're going to step out of that comfort and walk away from that? Like how does that decision making even happen, and how can you help others that are wrestling with, hey, I'm a lawyer, but I want to take this non-traditional path. Like how do they even start it?
I think if there's the way I approached it, which I think is a reasonably good thought process, Katie, it's twofold. And I'll start with the safety net first, which is, I mean, even to this day, I'm a licensed attorney. I've maintained my license. It's current. I don't ever expect to use it, but I have it. And that's one of the benefits of getting a law degree and being a practicing lawyer. It is there if and when you ever need it, which is one of the, it's a rare profession in that regard. So you always have that safety net. You can always go back and be a lawyer. And that's a beautiful thing. And then in terms of how like the thought process went for me and how it, like what's a good template to follow, the first thing I started to do was just think about my life and think about where I wanted to be. And then I thought about other people that I admired, and I thought about what their lives had looked like. And a theme popped up that resonated with me. And it was like the theme of like grinding or working versus building and impacting. And I had some opportunities to be a leader in other parts of my life as when I was younger, and I wasn't getting that opportunity as a lawyer. I was just grinding and working. And it became important to me that I wanted to take a swing at building and impacting. And so it just came down to what's the mark I wanted to leave on the world. And I owed it to myself and to take a swing. So that was what it was all about at its core. It's just, what kind of mark do I want to leave on this? What kind of legacy do I want to leave? And once I decided, then I had to take a shot.
A couple things there. Well, you hit a home run or a grand slam in the last inning of the World Series, so good on you. But a lot of times, and I think women with young children wrestle with this quite a bit. I won't make a big life change right now. I'll wait till the kids get older. But you had 2 young kids at home. I mean, how old were the kiddos at the time when you walked away from the law?
6 months and
Wow.
3.
Wow. So how was that transition then? Like, what gave you confidence to be like, you know what, I'm going to be decisive. I'm going to go on this legacy building journey now instead of just waiting until they get out of the house.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say it was like super profoundly thought out, but it was just like, I should go. I'm just going to get older. I just need to go.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not as profound or deep thought out as maybe it should have been. Because here's the thing: if I would have overthought it, I probably wouldn't have done it.
Right.
There's always going to be a reason why you shouldn't do something now or why to put it off. Always, 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 always. It's just eventually you got to go. And I wanted to start at my early 30s as opposed to in my 40s.
Yeah,
So,
and a lot of that comes down to just self confidence and believing in yourself, right? Like if you had the ability to make it as far as you already did, like what would there have been no red flags or indicators to think that you wouldn't be able to make it if you made the change? And sometimes I think we
yeah,
just lose sight of believing in
it's
ourselves.
I think it's a lot of that, a lot of like failure or lack of belief, but it's also just asking the simple. There's two things that I am a big believer in. Number one, always asking yourself, what's the worst that's going to happen? What is the worst that's going to happen if I do this? And then literally writing those down. And then asking yourself, what's the worst that's going to happen if I don't do this? And writing those things down. And if you look at the list, almost always you would have had future regret if you don't do it. So, like in this type of situation. And then the other thing that speaks into the belief, if you just look around the world, or look around a room, look around your local community, look at the people that are making the decisions, that are taking the leap, that are going for it, oftentimes they are not any more qualified than you are, and they never know what they're doing. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. They are all just figuring it out. So trust me, they're all just figuring it out. Nobody knows what the flying F they're doing. So just go.
Yeah, I mean that's what I say to associates all the time is like, what's rule number one of Fight Club? Nobody knows what's going on. Nobody knows. So
Nope.
just get up
Nope.
and do it. Yep. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, we say the same thing. So we've danced around this Scout and Cellar thing a little bit, but if you could give us just a 2-minute elevator speech of Scout and Cellar and what you built there, like what is it? How did it come
Yeah,
to be?
it is a, we are a people-powered B Corp winery that works with small growers around the world to bring to market beyond organic wines and sell them direct to consumer and via retail and national retailers in 38 states. But we bring wine to people that is better for the planet, better for you, makes you feel better when you drink it. It tastes better, won't make you feel hungover, no headaches, um, and it's free of pesticides, additives, sugar, all the stuff that's bad. It's only got the good stuff. And we created a standard of quality and purity to tell you all about it and change the wine industry as a result of it. There was no kind of clean, better for you movement or standard in wine before Scout and Cellar. And now there's a whole lot of standards, movement, talk, brands. So we started a conversation that a lot of people have started talking about as well. And so we've done a great job of impacting change as well as changing people's lives.
But why the wine industry? Why are you like, okay, I'm gonna make this change? I'm just going head first into the wine industry. What was it about the wine industry that felt could give you the platform to build your legacy?
Yeah, well, to start, right? So wine is something I knew. I grew up on a farm with food on the table, home cooked meals, and there was often wine on the table. And so I associated wine with a couple of things: food, community, connection, and also my dad was a lawyer, and I used to go on trips with him where he would go meet. He was friends with all of his clients who were small business owners, and there was always wine there. So I associated wine with like power and leadership and entrepreneurs and like this level of like um, types of conversations and connection that wasn't happening in every circle that I saw adults having. So I thought, okay, wine is a thing that is a food, but it's also a thing that people have when they're making decisions in that room that maybe not everybody's in, right? And so that interested me. So I became fascinated with wine. I'm also I have a good palate and good sense of smell, so that helps me to fuel it. When you're good at something, you tend to like it more, right? So people are like, "Are you just a really good drinker?" I'm like, "No, I just taste wine really well. I don't know. Maybe I'm a good drinker, but I'm a good taster." And so, for those reasons, I've always been interested in wine, love to collect it, travel for it, drink it, whatever. And so I think that's kind of what navigated me towards, or oriented me towards wine. I didn't stop practicing law to become an entrepreneur. I stopped practicing law to go work in the wine industry. And then I went and worked in the wine industry, and I thought, whoa, all this wine in the wine industry is all like commercialized, homogenized wine that's giving me a hangover. Like all the wines I like are made by people that live on farms, like, but there's not very many of them, and nobody knows that they're better and they should drink them. So maybe I'll commercialize that so people can have those in mass and tell their story. So that's what Scout and Cellar is all about, and that's how it came to be.
Well, not only did you disrupt the wine industry with your clean crafted commitment, you disrupted the direct selling industry. So let's complicate it. Let's already get into a very high competition, not easy to get into industry like the wine industry. But then let's put it on a platform that's equally as hard to leverage. So what was the decision behind putting it on the direct selling, Scout and Cellar and direct selling platform, and how has that changed your life and just perspective on things getting into that whole direct selling world?
Well, like many first-time founders, it was very naive. And if people tell you otherwise, they're just full of it. No, it truly, it's a combination of life experience and then market research. So, when I was doing market research, I'm like, all right, I'm going to launch this whole new kind of wine that's like better beyond organic, and it's commercializing uncommercializable wine. It's going to have this brand behind it, so people are going to want to drink it. I'm like, okay, how am I going to sell it? How is anybody going to know to buy it besides my mom and my sister? And I knew I wanted to launch it in e-commerce because I saw a big kind of white space in the e-commerce market. Like not a lot of wine was being sold online. As a lawyer, I had kind of started to craft a way to disrupt that from a legal perspective and a licensing perspective. And so I was excited to get to that. But I'm like, all right, I got to turn these bottles online. How's that going to happen? So looked at who was the buyer of wine and what made them buy wine. Like what were the reasons they chose to buy wine? And women were the primary buyers of wine for our households and inform all the buying decisions generally as well. But in terms of wine, we make the buying decisions and we buy wine based on three things: what our friends are drinking, the story behind the wine, and what the label looks like. And I'm like, okay, if these things are true, what's like a good like lead gen customer acquisition model that would like support some sort of sales? And a friend of mine across the street at the time was doing a direct sales company. Was like a consultant with some direct sales company. And so she started to tell me how it works over like what our kids are playing in the sandbox. And I'm like, so like you just tell your friends about this product and then they buy it through you and you get a commission? She's like, oh, yeah, I tell them how much I love it and how I use it and all this. And I'm like, that might work for Scout and Cellar. And so truly it was this, so I asked her all these questions over the next few weeks, got all of her materials and then hired really smart people to help me do all the other things, like build a compensation plan, build a brand,
Right.
all the things. But yeah, it was very naive, that.
What is one thing that you learned about the direct selling industry just getting into it at the level that you have, that maybe you weren't expecting or you just didn't know?
Well, I didn't know anything about it. And I think if future Sarah would have told 30-year-old Sarah that that's what she was going to be doing, she'd have been like, the what? Here's what I have learned, is that we didn't do direct sales and we don't do direct sales like anybody else. And that's a good thing. We came into it with a different perspective because I had never done it before. And so I think sometimes when you have founders that come from outside of an industry into an industry, they can add value to that industry because they have a different perspective. And I will offer that the direct sales industry has been incredibly welcoming to Scout and Cellar and to me as a leader. So I'm very grateful to that industry in general. It's been awesome, but they've welcomed the way that we've disrupted it and they've highlighted us and told our story in a lot of ways. And so that's been super, super cool. And it's also been really compelling to be able to like create an opportunity for a person who's maybe never worked before or who's never had a leadership position or who's never been in a position to like, who's lacks self-confidence or lacks like, public speaking skills, but to come in and take a job as an independent consultant as a 1099 with Scout and Cellar and develop those skills and shine and reach goals and like feel good about themselves and have a positive impact on their family and show their kids like, hey, I can win. So that's been cool and unexpected.
Well, you mentioned a little bit about that you wanted to create a legacy. So how have you seen your legacy? And I've gotten to see some of your amazing sales force. Like how has your legacy played out in that incredible independent contractor force that you've developed over the years?
Yeah, I think just by living the core values that we've kind of instilled at Scout and Cellar and that we do live out loud, which is integrity, community, And I think just like embodying those has been, a really big part of my legacy, and then making sure that every decision that an action that I take, public facing and private, all the way around, is reflective of those, and so yeah, and then helping everybody be successful. So yeah.
Yeah, so I got to touch the direct selling industry for a little bit, and I think to me the biggest thing that stood out that I had no idea about was just the industry is surrounded by remarkable women, and that's why I think it's so amazing for your story coming in as just an amazing woman and leading and taking the organization on, but then also the field. Like, have you seen the same thing? Just the depths of just remarkable women, both within the company and throughout the industry, that you maybe did or didn't expect, especially coming up, as a litigator in the South, like probably not surrounded by a ton of women.
Yeah, I what I've been particularly astounded by, and maybe it's naivete as well, but the quality of professionals and in our consultant force, like some of them are like way more qualified than me. Like they're doctors, and they're like long tenured lawyers, and they're C-level executives, and they're like badass women that are brilliant and like just believe in our brand and our mission and are just here for it. And just really grateful to get to be surrounded by such smart, passionate people that care about the same things that we care about, and they make us better. So that's the thing that's really astounded me. I mean, I didn't know what to expect, but it's cool. The quality, the caliber of quality is like awesome in our sales force.
Right.
They're a force.
Yes.
So that's
yes,
been cool.
they are.
Very inspiring. It keeps me on my game.
Yeah, and community is a great way to describe it. Do you think that the direct selling industry has any capacity to evolve? And if so, like, how do you think that the industry as a whole could evolve? And what would you like to see happen?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's trying to evolve. I think it's in the middle of an evolution. It's funny. I sit in these two industries, wine and direct sales, that are both ripe for innovation but slow to innovate. And so it's been a fascinating time to be in both and to try to push them forward and to have some success in some areas and slower success in others. But I think it comes down to like how they'll both be successful is to meet the consumers where they are and where they want to be. Right now, there's still a gap with both direct sales and wine, that they're not quite where today's consumer is. And so absolutely, as long as there's people that live in the world, then direct sales has a place, because humans crave connection, and direct sales is a people-powered, connection-driven, sales strategy. And so as long as there's humans that are buying in products and selling products, then there's a space for direct sales to be successful.
Yeah, that's awesome. On that positive note, let's dig a little. And hindsight, a lot of times, can be our greatest teacher, right? So take us back to 2017, knowing what you know now. Is there anything that you would change how you approached Scout and Cellar, the industry, or no? Was it all?
Oh, there's so many things I would have done differently, but like in terms of seismic things,
Yeah.
no, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things I would have done differently. Yes. But in terms of like headline grabbing stuff, probably not. I mean, we probably would have been nice to get into retail sooner and devote a little more attention to that, just to drive some brand awareness. But we had something happened in 2020 that really took us off our game for retail, called COVID. So like, I don't know. But no, I don't have any regrets. Well, for sure, regrets are not something that I like to try to spend effort or energy on. But no second chance, no, wouldn't have done it differently in terms of direct sales. But yeah, maybe would have gotten into retail sooner if not COVID, and certainly would have done some other things like back of house type stuff that's not super sexy for this discussion. But yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing I would have done that is coming soon, that I wish I would have done sooner and we would have done a better job of, is we haven't done a very good job of communicating just how awesome for the consumer the clean crafted commitment is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We do so much stuff behind the scenes in terms of testing and quality control, both in the vineyard and in the cellar, that we do not talk about or communicate in any coherent way to the consumer. But most of that, we just don't even talk about it. And so I wish we had done early on a better job of communicating the value that the customer is getting in terms of quality in a way that is compelling to them.
Well, and it does taste different. So, when you first came online, and I'm like, oh, whatever, Sarah, clean crafted. This is just marketing. I'm going to get some of this. You take that first sip, and it's so true. I was like, it tastes cleaner. So yeah,
it does. Yeah,
we
fell down there, and I wish we would have done it better. That is my biggest thank you for helping me get to that. We should have done a better job. But it's like I always say this. It's like you go to the farmer's market and eat that little tomato from the grower that just picked it like this morning, and it just explodes with flavor, versus the tomato you get at the big box retailer that's been sitting on the fluorescent lights for a month. That's the difference between our wines, ours or the farmer's market. It's that big of a difference. But yeah, we don't tell the consumer all that we're doing to help them really understand the value.
Well, in the retail model, people probably don't appreciate that nuance within the direct selling industry. And that's just epitomizes your courage and your willingness to make the hard decisions, because so many in the direct selling industry are like, we're not going in retail, it's going to be direct competition. So, all right, you lived it, you did it. Like, I can walk in stores and I see Scout and Cellar and I smile every time. How did that impact the business model? And are those fears for other entities justified? And how did you balance that with the sales force that has to get out there and sell for you too? And then now they know someone can just go down the street in a store and get it.
Yeah, I mean, tactically we balanced it by launching a different brand in retail, so that's how we handled it tactically. But from a channel conflict perspective, we sold the field on the idea that I believe in, which is more is more. Mm-hmm. The more that our brand of Scout and Cellar is in places, and the more that people are aware of it, the more there is to sell. The easier the sell is for you. It takes 10 warm introductions for someone to convert on a sale. So now if the more in retail we're in, like, we're taking 4, 5, 6 of those introductions into those sales, like to reduce the amount of time you have to spend on new customers, because now they're like, oh yeah, I saw it at Target, I saw it at Whole Foods, I saw it at Total Wine. Like, okay, like we're adding built-in credibility to the consultant's sales pitch, and reducing the amount of times that they have to do a reach out. So big picture, it is better for the consultant, but handling the fear factor was real. And how we tactically addressed it? We just launched it big time at our sales convention and said we were partnering with Target, which was of course true. And they were excited. And I mean, have there been fears and questions? Of course, but just answer it with authenticity, integrity, and truthfulness, and cast the vision and keep going.
Yeah, and I think it helps, build credibility to the brand as well, because so many outsiders to the direct selling industry are suspect or can be suspect of products that are coming. Right?
They're like, if this product is so great, why have I never heard of it?
Right? I've heard that before, and I'm like, you guys just don't understand the direct selling channel.
I know, but it is true. It's like, if this is going to be change my life, why isn't it in the store?
Yeah. Well, there you go, and it is. Like I said, and I smile every time.
And it is.
It is. And I buy it for gifts too all the time. But so having been a litigator and servicing clients, and now sitting in a CEO seat and founder seat, having to deal with outside counsel, like, how do we get your business? Like, what are the tips that you have for how we can get Scout and Cellar business, or just in general, like how outside counsel like pursues their sales tactics? like tactically how to land a new client? Yeah, I mean, like, now that you buy a ton of legal services, so right, like, yeah. So like, how does that go? Like, sitting in your CEO seat now, and the advice you have for outside counsel that are trying to close the deal.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with like what makes a good outside counsel, and then work backwards from there. Having now had the chance to work with a lot of lawyers over the last many years, I can say that, I sit in the operator seat. I'm operating a business, and so I'm focused on moving the business forward, making operational decisions, and doing things that make sense for the business. And I think that the lawyers that tend to fit in the best in that cog are the lawyers that have that top of mind and that can keep that cog, that wheel moving, that aren't a cog, that keep that wheel moving, as opposed to lawyers that come in and just want to over lawyer things and slow the wheel down. If
Hand
that makes
wringing, I like to
sense.
call it.
Yes, hand wringing, overworking something, over futzing about it, um, over complicating an issue. We want to know about the risks, and then we want to be able to make a decision and move forward. We don't want to belabor something or get pulled down into the details, and we certainly don't want to spend a bunch of time fighting about something. So I think the attorneys that are in step with that, certainly for like small to medium sized businesses, um, that's the way to win. So how do you get that? You communicate the value prop up front, um, by, like I would be interested in a lawyer that's worked with small to medium sized businesses, partnered with the CEO and founder or the leadership team to, um, as a true partner in operations, like type anecdotal stories and stuff like that.
On the hiring bit, over your time at Scott and Cellar now, you've had to do a lot of hiring. And it's always tough, right? Getting the right talent in the right place at the right time. What have you learned about hiring talent that you can share and how you're identifying that right person to bring in?
We use at Scott and Cellar a model called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. And it's kind of how we run our leadership meetings, how we handle communications, and how we like do planning. And one of the things, it has a people analyzer. And so one of the way it calls us to look at people is, do they get it? Do they want it? And like, can they do it? And so those are pretty basic questions, but those work. Like, do they understand the job? Can they do the job well? And do they want it? Do they like in their gut want it? Because if they don't, if the other two things are there and they don't want it, like, if any of those things aren't there, then they're not going to do the job well. And unfortunately, I've learned over the years that it's very hard in interviews and in reference checks to find out those three things and how true they are. Really, the only way to do that is on the job. And so don't be afraid to fire fast if it's not the right fit, because it's a sign of respect to your existing employees, and it's a sign of disrespect if you don't. But it's also a sign of respect to the new employee that like they can go find something else. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, we fired an executive after 40 days one time because it just wasn't the right fit. They didn't get it.
Yeah. And it's just a common theme with who you are. It's just the courage, right? And like having courage, belief in yourself, belief in doing the right thing, being decisive, all of that.
Trying to do the best we can, and owning it when you mess it up, which that.
So
We
I think
didn't
the
talk
most.
about that.
What's that?
We didn't talk about all the mess ups, but that could be another podcast.
There are no mess ups. You've just built this empire and you're amazing. And I know you're incredibly busy and you've just given us a ton of time. And I just want to say, what is so exciting about you is like your journey's just starting. And I can't wait to see what you do and where you go the next 20 years. And I'm just so grateful that you've just let me sit on your periphery and like be on the outside just watching you. You've been a source of motivation for me personally so many times at so many life changes. And I thank you for everything that you are and everything that you do for everything. Like you're just an amazing human. So,
Well, back at you. Your audience should know that you came and be reminded that of the standing ovation earning keynote that you gave at our national sales conference a year or two ago about grit, and it pulled the audience to tears, and how you totally nailed that and inspired them. So right back at you, that you do everything and anything it takes to make those around you better. And that was one example of it, but you are awesome. I'm grateful to know you. I wouldn't be here if you hadn't have convinced me not to quit after the third week. So,
Says the honor grad. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your time and just sharing some motivation and tidbits with us. I know it's going to go far for many.
awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Thank you. This was great. You're awesome.
All right. Talk soon.
All right. Bye.